Specifics. The president's opening bid to avoid the fiscal cliff, already called a non-starter by Republicans, as Mike just mentioned, includes this: $1.6 trillion in new taxes, $400 billion in spending cuts, TBD specifically on that, a little extra cash for infrastructure spending, Republicans call that stimulus, and a plea for new powers to raise the debt ceiling without having to go directly to Congress. Joe Trippi is Howard Dean's former presidential campaign manager and a Fox News contributor. Joe, nice to see you this morning.
Good to be with you, Jenna.
As opening bids go, what do you think of that one?
Well, it makes sense that it's the president's opening bid. I mean, look, we've just had this out in the campaign where Republicans ran around saying he's going to raise your taxes. His only answer is to raise taxes on the rich and play class warfare, and that we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. So if the president says, "Look, I want to raise taxes 1.6 trillion," should be no surprise. But if you want to cut spending more, put your specific cuts in Medicare on the table, and then let's start having the negotiations. So it makes sense to me that he would start low on the spending cuts and let the Republicans take the hit like he's taking it on taxes to explain where they want to do more spending cuts than he's proposed.
So we'll see if we get some more specifics really from Republicans or either side as we go into the weekend here. Joe, you're the perfect person to ask about perception versus reality, because that's something that plays very big in politics. Here's what one congressman from New Jersey had to say about all of this, quoted in the Wall Street Journal today. Congressman Andrews says this. That's just John coughing up a lung in the back of our studio. Don't mind him, Joe. Here's what Congressman Andrews has to say about this. Quote, "There's the public choreography, then there's the real choreography. To reach a deal, it has to look like there was a lot of fighting before the deal was actually reached." Is that what's going on here, Joe? The public is getting a sense that everyone's fighting, but behind the scenes, there is a deal that's really not too far away.
Yeah, I mean, I think a large part of that is true. Look, Republicans have got to be able to say, we fought and fought and fought, but the stubborn president and those Democrats made us give on taxes. We didn't want to raise taxes. We never wanted to do that, but we had to save the country from going over the cliff. The Democrats get to walk out after the big fight and say, we never wanted to touch Medicare or any of these other programs that were cut, but those mean, stubborn Republicans made us do it to stop the country from going over the cliff. We had to compromise. Neither side's happy, but they all get to go back to their districts and make the case that whatever horrible thing they did was caused by their willingness to compromise with the other party to stop the country from going over the cliff. That's what's going on here. Now,
Joe,
in all that, you could have
theater sort of stink for us, though, the public, that has to kind of sit here and watch that?
Yeah, yes, it does. But the other side of that is look, part of it is also a game of chicken where they both swerve off the road and we do go over the fiscal cliff. There's a big penalty to be paid for it. So, yeah, I think the American people were hoping after the election that both sides would be able to come together. Hopefully they will. I mean, I still, it's hard to say whether behind the scenes things are better than we think, or whether this really is a titanic battle that's going to be fought out and we're going to go over the cliff. No one knows that for sure yet.
No, that's the truth. How do you think this sets us up, though, for the year ahead? We have some really big challenges that our country faces, Joe. And I'm curious, I asked a congresswoman about this yesterday, your thoughts on whether or not how big of a role, party is in this problem and in not being able to really get any resolutions and kick the can down the road. Is it party the problem, or is it something else?
I think a lot of it is both parties and problems within both parties. I mean, the problem, I think a lot of the players that are sitting here already today making these decisions are looking at the 2014 re-election bid, and they're not worried about the other party. Their seats are safe for the most part, a Republican seat versus a Democratic challenger. What they're worried about is they vote for a tax increase here, and they're challenged in the primary and a primary next year, in 2014 and lose to somebody that was stronger on taxes. And the same thing over on the Democratic side. If they give up, if an incumbent member gives up on Medicare cuts, for instance, and he goes into his district, he's challengeable in his primary or her primary by somebody more to the left on that issue. So I think you're seeing the parties have problems, schisms within between moderates and hardliners in both parties that are creating part of the problem here.
And what becomes of that? How does party play into the politics of the future of our country is going to be a big conversation, Joe. Hope to have it with you soon. Thank you so much for the time today.
Thanks, Jenna.